welcome to the first after lunch session. My name's David. I've been asked to be the facilitator. Some of you have been in the sessions I've been facilitating before, so you know that Ollie has asked me to do two things at least. One is to keep the time, so they can start, and the second is that nobody hurts anybody else. So no fighting. And I think more generally that's about respecting listening, and then respecting what you say as well. I can do more if that is required, we'll get to it. But the session isn't for me, it's for you, and it's for Platform 6.
So hello. So Graham and I are Platform 6 Development Co-op at the moment. We are the sole members and sole directors, but we have a working group around us. I'm Mark Simmonds, and go for it. My job is helping people start co-ops, grow co-ops, and deal with the problems that cross out. So that is my livelihood. I'll let Graham introduce himself, and then we'll talk about what we're going to do.
My name's Graham, co-conspirator with Mark on this project. I've got a long history of involvement with the cooperative sector. Over the last decade or so, I've been making my living consulting around using some open source software applications, particularly CRM, but at the same time sort of maintaining interest in cooperative development and moving things forward on that front. So that's where I'm coming from.
So this is what we're going to do in the session. So very briefly, because we want less of slides and us talking and more of you talking, and say who we are, what we're trying to do with Platform 6, why we're doing it, and then we want to discover what you think about that idea and how we might do it better. So if we go to the next slide. So we are actually a real platform cooperative. We exist. We are a company limited by guarantee, registered with cooperative rules. We're a cooperative consortium model, so anyone who basically uses the services of the co-op can be a member. I'll go on and say a bit more about how else you can be a member as well. Those people that we want to be members are people like me, cooperative development workers, okay, and there's a few others in the room as well. Individual cooperators, and there's a few of them in the room as well. So these are the people who basically, they are staunch cooperators. A lot of what they do, not necessarily their job, is around furthering the cooperative movement, and there's a lot of them out there. And the other ones are cooperatives, and this is the group that we're probably going to target further down the line, where what we're looking to do, and the reason we call Platform 6 is because the 6th cooperative principle of 7 is cooperation amongst cooperatives. So we want to find ways for the existing cooperative movement, which has a fair bit of money swirling around it, to be actually facilitating cooperative development and the next lot of cooperatives. So there's a big aspiration to double the size of the cooperative economy. We need to resource that, and Platform 6 wants to be one of the things that does that. I'm not going to read through our aims, but the three main things we're going to do is we want to facilitate a network of cooperative expertise and shared resource. We want to generate funds for cooperative development, and that could be any cooperative development. So it might even be sponsoring this event or part of this event next year. And we want to broker relationships within that community of practice to deliver formal cooperative business support. So we want to find a way for people who've got ideas or just want to bounce ideas off to start to interact with that cooperative practice to get those ideas tested, but then maybe build relationships that become formal mentoring or even paid for business support that might be funded through the platform as well. So quite big aspirations. Our inspiration and proof of concept is a thing called Solid Fund, and we've got two of the founders of Solid Fund here, so I think I should hand over to them for a minute or so to give out leaflets.
So Solid Fund deals with the same premise that there isn't enough money to support the development of worker co-ops, and we're not going to find that money if we go to grant makers or government. So we raise the money from worker co-op people themselves. So worker co-op people basically sign up to pay £1 a week into a fund, £50 a year, and that gives them entrance into a discussion forum where they decide decide collectively between 576 of them where that money is spent to make their worker co-ops better and to develop new worker co-ops. And it basically raises about £30,000 a year at the moment. And it's been going a couple of years. And so it's great, but it's just for a very specific sector. And that's why we're interested in this much broader thing.
So we want to basically extend that, maybe it's use of some of the tech that we're hearing about today to make it easier to use and access, and also make it pertinent to the entire cooperative sector. So just to be clear, we're not just talking about starting and developing platform co-ops or digital co-ops, we're talking about using the technology to support the development of all cooperatives. And this is, we're using a lean startup methodology, so this is our first minimum viable product, which is basically just Solid Fund, but for the whole movement. So we are just about to start recruiting. You will be able to join for a minimum subscription, which will probably be £1 a week as well. We're going to collect funds, and then with those people who become members, we're going to explore how we use those funds. So, and I'm thinking early on, that actually might be to bootstrap our own development within that, although we will be open to any suggestions, really, as long as it relates to cooperative development. And the purpose of that first minimum viable product will be to test, firstly, will they come? And secondly, will they engage? Because what we don't want to do is just fill a bank account up with money, but when we say, what do people think about this? Deafening silence. Okay. And then over to you. So what we'd like you to do is say, that's rubbish, have you thought of this? What our next minimum viable product might be. So once you've done that and we've tested those things, and assuming they've come and they are engaging, what should we be looking at in terms of technology, business model, ripping it up, starting again, etc. Have I missed anything?
No, that's good. Not more to add anything to that.
Are you running a cohort model?
I don't know. What's a cohort model?
Like
Oh, I do know what a cohort model. So basically where we recruit a cohort and then take them through. We are talking about that around some of the other stuff we're doing, because this is only one of the things we're doing. So there's a lot of new excitement around cooperative training, cooperative. So we're looking at training the next tranche of cooperative developers, but there's also other people looking at graduates, apprenticeship programs and things like that. Also the sort of that, what a lot of the sort of investment-driven models are looking at, are taking co-ops of entrepreneurs and then hothousing them, which is effectively what the Unfound project is doing as well. We are open to that, but it's not part of our MVP. If you're particularly interested in that and thinking this might be a vehicle for it, then you could join and then basically propose that and put a group around it.
full disclosure, I'm incubator co-op out of Australia. We think the cohort model for co-ops sucks. Yeah.
Sucks.
Yeah, well, I think you and I haven't had an exchange on that very point. So yeah, I can see the value of it, but I think that it's a model born out of a capitalist approach, and I think that we can do better than that because of actually developing a business idea and taking it forward and building something that's sustainable takes more than 5 weeks or whatever it is. That whole sort of cohort model, as you call it, it's a good name. It panders to what the VCs want rather than what the business owners want. So I think it's not a good fit for us.
I just wanted just to dive into that a bit more deeply, because at the moment I'm in discussions about setting up a new accelerator. We've been debating whether we have a cohort model or not. And the advantage for us of a cohort model is that you've got a group coming in, building trusted relationships with their peers going through the cohort that can provide peer support in the way that a unstructured thing doesn't. Now I think we're not saying we're solving their problems in 5 weeks and we're not doing demo day at the end. What are the other problems with the cohort model that you're worried about?
This is your session. Do you mind if I answer?
No, you go ahead.
All right. So the cohort model doesn't give the would-be members and the community that you're trying to get around a cooperative the natural time that it needs. So we've seen in incubator co-op there are some urgent pressing needs, which means the co-op can like identify with its members exactly what its primary activity is and what the active membership test is, and then they're pretty well going through at the speed of a typical cohort in a corporate incubator. But there are a lot of these, like community energy cooperatives, right? When you get that happening in a township, somebody's view of community energy might be, hey, we've got 30% of the town's got solar, so we just need to buy a battery and we'll put it all together. And somebody else's view is, no, we need $10 million worth of wind turbines. And they've got to hash that out. They've got to have that discussion, and it takes months, like years. You don't get, especially for you guys, I don't know about your situation, if you're open to all co-ops, platform varieties and local community owned and data and investment co-ops and all those, and you start trying to push them into 3 months or 6 month cohorts and do a top-down kind of education process and mentoring process where you've got the associated costs of an expert in residence and the mentors being on tap and even the physical infrastructure of getting their time and attention. Unless you're well funded, which credit to you guys for your funding method, and it will grow. But you'll run half a cohort at the moment and you'll run out of money.
Oh yeah. Well, we're running on sweat equity, which we will never realise at the moment, and that's fine because we're surviving. There are aspects of the cohort model that I like. I like the supportive community of practice, or maybe around a sector or around a group of people that are in the same place. So things like action learning sets, it relates quite well to some of the other stuff that we're involved with, which we're calling barefoot cooperative development, which is about taking people out of co-ops and using them to deliver business support in a peer-to-peer model. So yeah, there's nothing on paper around looking at co-op model, but you talking about this got me cogs whirring.
I think one of the other things, just pitching on that same point, the cohort model sort of presupposes that you've already got a fairly effective group of people that are focused around that entrepreneurial idea. Okay, let's get together and do this, and we've been talking about this for 6 weeks. Oh look, here's a cohort system that we could jump into. Actually, what we're looking at is something much broader than that. So I bumped into somebody at lunchtime talking to them about an idea they've got for a mobile application. There's one person, he might have some friends, I don't know, but we want to be able to accept something at a much earlier stage and say, yeah, we think this is an interesting idea, come and join our community of practice, and we can then find other people to start to form that group. So we're trying to operate from a much earlier stage, but we're also, because of our vision about trying to build something that is sustainable and self-funding over the long run, we want that group of people, if they're, let's assume that they're successful, they build their cooperative starts generating revenue and profit, and we want them to be reinvesting some of that profit back in, and for them to reinvest their time and energy back in and pay it forward for the next generation that comes through. Yeah. So we want to build that community rather than just not have a sausage machine, but actually grow a community of interest around that.
Sure. Can I just, a question of clarification just for me, because you hadn't used the word incubator in your slides.
Yeah.
You said development cooperative. Cohort is one way of being an incubator, but it sounds like what you were describing was larger than an incubator.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so an incubator is a good term because people use incubators to hatch eggs, right? And then you get a chicken out of that egg, and then the chicken buggers off, and 6 weeks later it gets butchered. Okay, so what we're interested in is more about growing a forest, maybe, to use a comparable analogy. So, a forest takes centuries to grow, and we're trying to do something that's more sustainable, more long-term, and provide a nice place for the chickens to live.
The chickens live in forest area.
Again, I was just reflecting on that, on this discussion. I was, what came into my mind is a group called Founders and Coders, which some of you may know about. Founders and Coders resourcing is mysterious, but essentially it's a free coding bootcamp for very smart working class kids who've been hacking games since they were 12, and it's a boot camp it's a coding boot camp that turns them into job-ready developers in 8 weeks. And it's Founders and Coders is based in Bethnal Green, London. Now it's not a co-op itself, but it's very co-op minded, and it has been part of a number of co-op projects. And what they've been trying to do is, is encourage their cohorts, because it does work in cohorts, to consider the option of forming networks and groups of interest and forming worker cooperatives to actually deliver good work for themselves and do good projects. And that's always been part of their ethos. But it's actually only now they're just getting their first actual real co-op coming out of it. It's called InFact. But the thing about that InFact is that came out of a cohort that's 2 years ago. So that cohort has been talking to each other and to others, and it's taken them 2 years to form their group with a clear enough plan to go forward. And I have 2 years seems to be this recurrent thing in terms of. And then there was another project which actually Founders and Coders was part of, called the Young Cooperators Network, which is an initiative in the UK to encourage young people to form co-ops, particularly worker co-ops, freelancer co-ops, etc., etc. And their model was that we're going to launch 6 new young people's co-ops, and then as soon as they're profitable, those co-ops are going to fund the next generation of the Young Cooperators Network. And it kind of foundered because it takes a lot longer for a startup sweat equity co-op to become profitable than even the 2 years. So the timescales are big, and I think that's such an important perspective in what we do.
Because I work with a lot of co-ops that I helped set up 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago. Very few of them would be in a position to be actually putting significant amounts in. What we'd quite like to do is get them to put token amounts in, engaging as part of that community of practice, but a way of almost embarrassing the bigger co-ops that exist, the ones that have been around for 150 years, to say, actually, we'll have some of that, and put, say, that some of our plastic bag fund or whatever into that, and then it will really start to fly.
Yeah, and by having a low cost of entry into that community, what we want to do is have people to come and participate and be there. And okay, so the co-ops that you're just referring to there, they might not have significant chunks of cash to put into the system, but they might have a bit of time. They've certainly got a lot of expertise because they've just gone through that 5-year program, so they can bring that to the fore to advise the next lot that are coming through. So it's avoiding wheel reinvention at the same time.
So I don't think anyone's broken our model yet. Please try. And we're also interested in ideas for, have you thought of next steps type stuff?
It's him again.
Someone's bringing a hammer.
Okay, so how are you solving the sweat for equity dilemma in that most corporate startups, the founder gets 100% of the equity at day one of incorporation, and then swaps that with co-founders, swaps that with an incubator for the chance to develop their business model and pitch. How are you resolving that so that you can get those service providers, you can get that mentoring, you can get that founder or co-founders into a project?
So for me personally, it's worth me, this is like a loss leader for me, because it will generate work for me that I can leverage funding for from elsewhere through. There are programs that already exist, like through the Hive project run through by Cooperatives UK. So there is stuff there, it's just not going to be able to cope with doubling the size of the cooperative economy, and also it's not guaranteed to continue down the years, and it's limited in what it can do as well. So there are areas that are unspoiled. So basically I can carry on doing this for free, and other people involved with it can as well. It's a separate question for the people who come in as a membership, is what was their member benefit, and that's the thing we're deciding at the moment. And the thing we're finding in Solid Fund is people want to engage as part of that cooperative community of practice. Anyway, it's almost the thing that they're doing while they're working. They're also, the Lumio's going on in there, and they're doing it. But that certainly is something that we really want to test, hopefully not to destruction.
But also, I mean, obviously money's really important. And I guess my take on it is, okay, I don't make money out of supporting cooperative development or supporting cooperatives in the way that Mark does, but I can see that there are opportunities with this. It's something I've been passionate about for the last decade or so, so I'm keen to try and push this idea forward. I think that there are opportunities to bring significant chunks of money into play, which would, cover my time. I'd like to get my time paid for. That'd be great. I'm not interested in some massive payout at the end of the day, particularly. But I think that because what we're trying to do is build something that actually works and that can develop a life of its own and go on, without sort of having sort of constant drip feed in.
So we've got 2 questions waiting. My question, what would success look like? 3 years' time, you're successful because...
So, 1 year's time, we want 50 stalwart cooperators that are paying in a reasonable chunk of money that allows us to be bootstrapping whatever our next minimum viable product is, and co-designing that. I think 3 years' time, if we had several hundred members and a dozen cooperatives in membership.
Okay.
So we're not rushing at it.
Sure.
And I think that if organisations do come forward and say, okay, well, we're interested in accelerating this, then I think we're open to that if they're able to invest in that. That's fine. But we're being realistic
I
about
just
it.
wanted to land that sense of my voice.
So one of the things we found is from a cooperative case point of view, it's really hard to get money out of organisations and corporates. It's just hard because they just look at it as a bottom line thing. It's easier to get money out of individuals when you can link it to a values-based thing. If people are willing to give money to animal sanctuaries and animal welfare stuff, then as long as you can sell the sell of this, which is about spreading wealth and economic democracy, and there's a whole group of the community that would give you 50 quid a year to support economic democracy. And I think that's why this is interesting, because you're tapping into that charitable donation market with something that I'm more passionate about with animal welfare.
But I think there are different benefits for different constituencies. So in the main hall this morning we were talking earlier about local government promoting cooperative development. Okay, so how are they going to do that? Well, they're going to need access to some expertise. So it may be that they're interested in supporting what we're doing, because that could give them access to all that expertise that exists right across the country through a single platform. So there may be opportunities there, for example.
And if we can get the larger co-ops who think maybe this is something we can't engage with that well, if they can just flag it to their members, who are a lot of staunch cooperators in there, it may be that we can bypass that and we're dealing directly with individuals.
The co-ops might resist the obvious choice, right? They keep giving these money to these good causes, but it's not back into other cooperatives.
Sorry,
I was surprised that they have these local good causes, but none of them are cooperative models, right? They're all like local.
They generally support charities.
They're supporting charities, right? But those charities themselves aren't, like, again, in that Preston model, like feeding the ecosystem. They're not, I know cooperative charities hybrids, right? That kind of do work in community projects. So why, I'm surprised that my local cooperative shop isn't like saying, let's build a cooperative economy that benefits everybody.
The truth is they fund things like Co-op UK and Co-op Party.
Yes.
They don't fund stuff.
I think that the trouble with the sharing economy is that shareholders don't share, banks don't share, landlords don't share, and what we're lacking is the agreements within which we can share. And that my work is in relation to, well, what do these agreements, these institutions actually look like? So you could quite straightforwardly come up with something like an LLP, capital partnership. You basically put, instead of buying the wind turbine from Simmonds, you actually say you put the turbine into the pot, and we'll give you a percentage of the output once it's actually in place. Oh, and by the way, you participate that way in the development gains, right? Because at the minute the developer gets all that. So you can actually do some really interesting things with project-specific development vehicles. And an LLP is as simple as it gets. It's like the chrysalis that takes the caterpillar to the butterfly, right? Looking forward then, what about prepayment? Rental credits, for instance, use credits. For me, the future is about actual economic instruments that are returnable in payment for something useful. For me, the currency of the future is an energy credit. You get it anywhere, not some credit that comes from a bank, you know? All right, I'm thinking big picture stuff, but we can fund things using an agreement. Cooperatives of the future are not organisations, they are agreements between organisations. This is like a cooperative consortium, that's what you're doing. And I'm saying we can do that a bit differently. Anyway, enough said.
And also bear in mind that we are looking to engage right in the mouth of the funnel with the people who maybe don't even know what a cooperative is, to basically get them down where they can start to engage with that, where they're having an idea about a renewable energy project, where they can start to seek support around it.
They don't need to know how the sausage is made, do they?
No.
It just needs to be a sausage.
And on that, gentlemen,
It's a nice segue point because that's exactly what I'm interested in. You asked the question about what's the future, what does the future look like? And you talked about structural future. But what about outcomes? What kind of outcomes do you want? And who dictates what those outcomes are? For whom?
So that's
I care that people care what the sausage is made of. Who's this for, and how are you designing it to ensure that those for whom this is being designed for have a say?
So if that's the thing we want at the top, so that's what success looks like, a world where cooperatives work together to support the next generation of cooperatives. So it's that principle 6 thing. Exactly what that looks like, I suppose we're being a bit lazy really, because we are 2 members at the moment. It soon will be 50 members, and it's almost up to them. We want them to design what that looks like. We've got ideas, but we don't want to impose them.
What would failure look like for you?
Failure will be
In terms of outcomes?
a small number of membership and a small number of funds to do stuff with.
Yeah, well, we're here to help cooperatives get started and to help cooperatives grow. Those are the outcomes that we're looking to achieve.
If those 50 members said they want to set up fracking sites across the UK,
They wouldn't be able to,
why not?
because it would be against the aims of the organisation.
So those are codified, the aim. So that's, so what does our future look like in terms of outcomes? What kinds of projects get funded through this mechanism?
Well, that's our first job. So what we'll have is protocols on how you put a proposal together, what are the sort of things that can be proposed, and then what are the criteria that the members are going to use to decide. So I would say, while you could theoretically say a fracking project might be consistent with them, I cannot imagine any situation where that would happen, because the members wouldn't allow it to happen.
You're talking about principles here, aren't you? Organising principles.
Yeah.
So there's one person waiting to come in.
Yeah, hi. There's been talk about how trade unions, for example, are not very receptive to these ideas of platform cooperatives, but compared to, say, a shareholder bank, there's quite a clear mechanism to influence trade unions, and that is trade union elections where all the members have one vote. And I've been thinking that to get trade unions aboard, one way could be to take part in those trade union elections or support candidates in those elections who support platform cooperatives. And one way could be that if Platform 6 can offer, say, digital advertising advice to those candidates, or perhaps even crowdfunding campaigns for their campaigns, that could happen. And one of the ways that I submitted this proposal in Social Call would be that members would give money to a candidate's campaign, and the Platform 6 could choose how to use that money to promote the campaign. And if that person is elected, he needs to pay that, or she needs to pay that money back. But if not elected, the Platform 6 loses the money. And I don't know. What do you think about that?
What do you think about that?
I need to know more about it. I don't think I really understand what you're saying. I don't know if Graham does.
Well, you're talking about sort of funding political campaigns, essentially. Yeah.
Election campaigns.
Yeah.
So maybe not even funding, but helping, say, advertise a trade union candidate who is very pro-platform cooperative.
Yeah, I think I get what you're talking about. So, I mean, my immediate reaction is that I don't think that that's really what we're about. I think that you know, it's up to individuals who they vote for. I'm not really interested in trying to influence that vote. I think, you know, if we develop a successful cooperative movement, then people will support it. That'd be my approach on
But
that.
our stop reply might be to every question now, it's what the members want to do. So if you joined, you can propose that,
There's an
and we
ironic,
can vote on it.
there's an
Yeah.
I've already joined.
There's an irony to that, because he's saying that you should use the process by which members drive the direction of trade unions, and you're saying, well, if our members think we should do that, then we should do that. It's like a double referral to it.
Well, it's almost, that's a project in its own right that we might fund.
So abusing my role as facilitator then, because part of my day job is being a strategy advisor, and so you're wanting places or potentially breaking your model. I suppose a worry I have for you is, whilst it's all ephemeral, how will you attract? What is your proposition to the members to join, whilst it is so iterative?
Yeah.
And whilst it's like, until they join, we don't know exactly what it is. But you don't know exactly what it is until they join. So why should they join?
Yeah.
Quick answer to that is we pretty much know who the initial members will be. We've got a Lumio working group of about 40 people. We're fairly confident that most of them will join. We know other people, what we call install work cooperators. We can pretty much, we think, predict the way that they're going to drag it in the initial stages before it opens up more. So we are fairly confident, but also fairly alive to, if that's what the members of the co-op want to do, that's what will happen. And if it's something that then it becomes something that I don't think I want to be part of, then I'll go away and do something else.
Okay.
So openness is sort of key principle there.
Sorry.
Openness.
Sure.
And you know, sort of.
I mean, I've been part of open networks which have that stated aim, and then because there's no sort of visionary centre, they all just fall apart. So that's the other risk I would see for you. We have 5 minutes left. We have 5 hands up. So can we have like snappy questions?
Minute each.
So we'll collect the questions.
Not quite. It's a snappy response from our experience in the Worker Co-op Solidarity Fund. And the Worker Co-op Solidarity Fund set out, has a set of aims, right? We say we want to support education and training for worker co-ops, the independence of worker co-op organisation and culture. In other words, very general aims. Then we recruit all these members. They start paying in. They start talking to each other. And early on, we let it be open. So basically, the only thing is, if people can say, broadly speaking, this proposal fits one of these aims, they can make their argument. But early on, what we found was a number of tensions and people saying, I'm not supporting this because I didn't think that was what it was for. What they mean is, I don't want to support this because my idea of what I would like Solid Fund to do is something different. So and then we discussed using a co-budget type technology so that people can put different bits of micro allocate their funds to the things they're particularly interested in. Then we didn't do that. Then we found by year 2 that the discussion is settling down a bit and people are more confident and more kind of are easier with not worrying too much about, I didn't think this is what it was for. And people have started using the funds and putting proposals for things we didn't really envisage. So we've already started doing micro equity investments or stuff that I didn't really expect to happen. So it's very interesting how as the culture develops, the members do decide, but also the confidence with which the members do that does also develop. It matures as a kind of discourse, and that's what's happening right now in the Solidarity Fund. So it's quite interesting. I mean, one of the very early ones was somebody said, "Can the Solidarity fund me to go to the platform co-ops conference in New York?" And basically got voted down because they wanted to go by plane, and there were so many environmentalists. They just said, we're not funding any plane travel, and then that became policy. It's like, right now. Anyway, so it's just a response to I think some of this. What you're talking about is kind of this idea that Solid Fund could support a candidate who is solidly pro-co-ops in the union. I don't see why not. But people might have something to say about that. It's perfectly legitimate.
I'm just aware of what's there are a few other hands. Did you have anything more to say?
Yes, I'll yield the floor to those who have
Is there anybody who's got a chance to speak yet? That's more than I'd like to offer. The last session I was in, so there's basically there's been one female contribution at that point. So is there any more female contribution? Right, like, I just, on the off chance that someone's holding back. That's the rule.
Can we get some more black voices in the room?
Yeah.
No, I mean, sorry, I didn't play that. I didn't mean to play that card, but it's especially that interests me in this conversation. So we're talking culture is the elephant in the room. You talk about, you already know who the members are, who dictate the principles upon which things were created.
We know the people who have expressed an interest and helped us with the co-design so far,
I understand.
and we anticipate that many of them will join. We expect, and already we're getting people asking to join the Lumio group, which will probably just turn into a public Lumio group as part of this. So there is a wider constituency that aren't members but that we're engaging with. There are lots of people who are coming forward now that I've never met before. I've no idea who they are. They're really interested and exciting people, and hopefully some of them are in this room as well.
So,
Certainly, I'm acutely aware of that we're sort of largely dominated by white middle class men, and I think that's a real downside with beards. Yes.
But I think laziness is untenable with change. If we truly care about change, we cannot be lazy about. I think you use the word laziness. I'm not using it on you. It's just that you use it casually, and it's not such a casual thing because that's why we face cultural failure. And you're building a cultural space, and I think when we're talking about principles, we articulate the principles of cultural engagement, and because that would force the issue, it would force the debate, rather than as a side or afterthought. It would be good to codify it and be clear about it, and so the people who aren't necessarily aligned with that can also be clear where we spend our energies elsewhere.
I totally agree with you, and I think the way we've tried to do that, and we don't know if it's succeeded yet, is trying not to define that space, so leave all the possibilities open, so we're not accidentally putting barriers up. Now, maybe that's the wrong approach.
So I think that we'll have to continue that part of the conversation later because we're about to run out of time. And you said you wanted 20 seconds.
All right, yes. So two things. If you're interested, go to platform6.coop, and there is just a sign up for a mailing list at the moment, and we will email you and tell you when we're opening membership, which will be this month. But also go and have a look at solidfund.coop as well, which is about worker co-op support, solidarity. You don't have to be a member of a worker co-op to be part of that.
Absolutely not. So, Solid Fund, Solidarity Fund, this is going to change our environment. It's going to be really interesting to see how we can work with you to start creating a much more kind of richer environment for this.
Yeah, we don't want to dominate this space, we just want to be part of an ecosystem with other things as well.
Wonderful. Okay, with that, we'll say thank you to
Thank you.